Welcome back to another episode at Supply Chain Lab. Today we are discussing something I'm very passionate about, the circular illusion, rethinking circularity in Africa beyond recycling. Today I'm joined by a great guest, Dr. Thandekile Madikane. Thank you so much for making time to come join us today.
Thank you.
So I think before we start, for those that don't know you, I Googled you, and you're quite an easy person to stalk because all the information is there. All the information is there. But for those that don't know you, can you tell us a bit about yourself, what your journey has been, and why this topic is important to you?
Yeah, so I think, it's a long history. I'm in the energy space, firstly. I've worked from a marketing, corporate marketing, perspective. I've done sales within the same space as well. I've had the privilege of going, and looking after several countries within SADC itself, which I think has really given me a very interesting outlook in terms of, energy resiliency and systems and transition and all these other things. But also I have a doctorate in business administration from the Paris School of Business. And really my focus there was on whether or not, the energy space in the African continent, is ready for the energy transition and what that means realistically and what should African countries and industries be doing in relation to that. I also teach at UJ and a number of other business schools where I teach strategic marketing, I teach advanced digital marketing, I teach on sustainability. So that's really kind of the topics that I'm very, very interested in, but also, quite active within the sustainability side of things within the energy sector itself.
Okay. So what has all the teaching taught you about the energy transition and how we should be thinking about it within Africa?
So what has the teaching specifically?
Yeah, like how has teaching strategy kind of shaped your thinking around the Africa energy transition and the circular economy?
Sure.
I guess teaching and your experience as well, yeah.
No. I mean, and I think it's a good question, but I think before we start, or maybe before we get into what the teaching has done, maybe the question becomes, how I've possibly gotten to where I've gotten, if you will give me that opportunity.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to kind of tell that story because it kind of gives perspective in terms of what we'll be discussing today.
Okay.
So I think firstly, there's been a couple of moments that have led me here. So the first one is around, at some point I was running, potentially the first carbon neutral dealerships in Africa. That's what one was trying to establish in their professional sort of, expertise and realm. That kind of then led me to understand that, within the energy space, a lot of the companies are trying to transition. There's all these net zero sort of aims and whatever the case may be. But unfortunately, we as staff didn't really understand what that meant. So the project kind of gave me an understanding, carbon neutrality, emissions, and what that kind of looks like. That then obviously led me to do the DBA that I did. And I kind of, learned a few things there as well, which have opened my eyes, but also made me very, I think, strong-willed within understanding, teaching, and I think ultimately seeing if one can make change within the African continent. So for instance, I mean, there's some interesting data. If you look at, from a greenhouse gas emissions perspective, as Africa, we emit less than 4%. So when you teach in the classroom, people always ask you, so why should we care, right? But interestingly, 7 out of the 10 countries which are most affected by the change actually are in Africa, including DRC, Burundi, Central African Republic, depending obviously which measure or research study that you're looking at. And for me, then kind of said to me, I need to really understand the space if I'm able to make any change, because if I understand it, I can teach the next person and I can know if the narrative actually makes sense, right? Through the work that I've been doing, I think just on a daily from a teaching perspective, but also running some sustainability campaigns throughout, I mean, maybe the past year or two, it's become very, very evident to me that we've always been doing circularity in some form or shape. Okay. If you think about your grandmother, and I'll kind of reiterate on this as we go along, she would use the gem jar, right, to store soap. You know what I mean? Circularity is that how do you reuse, you understand? She would maybe take, the famous ice cream tub. And from a township perspective, or many other countries for that matter in Africa, it gets reused for other things as well. Okay? So also, I think the teaching element, if you're looking at strategy, if you think about it, it's basically how do you move from this point to a preferred vision that you are wanting to get to, and it's everything that obviously then happens in between, right? So teaching, researching, understanding that has actually also then taught me that there's a lot of initiatives that are happening in a lot of our African countries, and we'll unpack some of these a little bit more. If you look at things like, in Kenya, they've got something called Ocean Soul, where they collect flip-flops. I think over 7 billion of those get thrown into the ocean and are washed up on the seashore, right? Those are collected. They then refurbish them and they make really creative art, maybe giraffes, hippos, you know what I mean? And that gets exported everywhere. I mean, they collect over 700,000 of those things a year, okay? If you're looking at a place like Nigeria, for instance, so there's an initiative called Recycling, where the households in Lagos will collect plastic bottles and those sort of things. There's a person in a almost like a tricycle to come and collect the rubbish that gets weighed, and then those people get paid for that sort of thing. So there's already some shift and a movement in that, and I think teaching strategy has kind of opened my eyes to those realities. And look, it's fun because you get challenged as well. So you need to think on your feet, research more than the next person, and students obviously are exposed themselves, so they teach you as well as part of that experience.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying. I do think when you teach, you learn the most.
Yeah, definitely.
I think when you teach, you learn the most. So I like what you've touched on with some of the examples that you've given around like initiatives or things that are already being done by Africans or that were being done like a long time ago. Yeah. So why is it that when we think about sustainability or circularity, do we feel that we need to take a European approach? Because obviously they're at the forefront from a research, I guess, perspective. They have like the data. Maybe we don't have as much data. How can we make circularity more grounded within like our borders? Yeah. How should we be thinking about it?
Yeah, look, it would seem that there is obviously a European or Western lens to the topic, and I think purely because if you remember the stats that I've just given you around the percentage greenhouse gas emissions, we've got bigger problems in Africa, so why should we even care, right? So there might be, I think, bigger pronouncements elsewhere than here, but as I've mentioned, really the one thing I need for us to take out of this is we've been actually sustainable. We've been actually circular, right? So for instance, if you look at maybe an African supply chain and in terms of what it might look like, maybe if I can unpack that a little bit. Look, some of these initiatives are taking place. So for instance, right now you could go into the middle of Tembisa, right? You could go into a forecourt petroleum station. You living in a shack, for instance, right? You have problems with electricity because there's load shedding, load reduction, the transmission sort of, machine, something goes wrong, and it goes wrong all the time. You've got people who don't have electricity for 2 to 3 days. You can go to a forecourt right now, and for 20 rands, hire yourself a portable, affordable battery that you can keep for a day. The bigger one will cost you 40 rands, for instance. That brings back dignity to people's lives, if you think about it, because then you're not using, paraffin, candles that could potentially cause issues, If you look at, Cape Town, for instance, there are taxi ranks that are fully solar. that also receive their water from the rooftop water when it rains, for instance. So these things are happening, okay? Look, there's a lot of examples. I mean, I've given you an example of Ocean Soul. I've given you an example of what we cyclers are in Nigeria and really the great work that is taking place there. And remember, these become very significant because if you think about the taxi industry, for instance, there's taxis right now that are being tested, for instance, in Stellenbosch, where they are using almost like an EV taxi of sorts, right? Because that then saves you on the electricity, on the fuel that you would use. It's cleaner for the environment. Yes, slightly maybe a little bit more expensive, but obviously technology over time becomes cheaper.
Yeah.
You understand? In South Africa, over 70% of the population gets on taxis, and those are working class people. So these are quite significant, I think, developments, for instance, right? So I think really what I'm trying to say here is there are some shape and form of things that are taking place, right? Also then in terms of research, for instance, you'll also learn, and I mean this was mind-blowing for me when I kind of went through, the studies I've gone through. So for instance, in the township you've got, Ubabu Joe, for instance, who owns a barber shop, right? Ask yourself what happens to the hair that he clips, when he gets somebody to look like me with a chiscorp. What happens?
Does he not burn it?
No.
What does it do to the hair?
Well, I'm going to go there, right? Because most of us, we want our hair to be burned for African traditional sort of beliefs in terms of what happens to your hair. But none of us ever ask for the hair to take home after, you know what I mean? And so the question is, what happens? He probably throws it in the dustbin, it goes somewhere, right? There's places right now where you can collect people's human hair and create what we call hair mats out of it. It's a mat that's made of human hair, right? And you could use it at a typical place like an industrial site where there might be an oil spillage because hair is unique, right? It doesn't absorb water, but it does absorb oil, right? So even when you've got oil spillages in the ocean, you can create almost like this rounded long, if you see those things that help you kind of swim, I just forgot what they're called, you can create those using human hair.
I don't think
and you can block
Africans want that. I hear you, but I feel like a lot of people are going to start asking for the
No, well, look, maybe after this episode you might want to, but currently we actually are not, right?
Yeah.
But also just one other thing I can touch on is, biogas digesters, right? What this means is, ask yourself again, you go to a chisanyama in the township, you eat meat. What happens to that meat? Pap, the, chakalaka and all these other things. Now with a biogas digester, you put all that organic material into it, it converts that, for instance, to, you can what's the word? Water your plants with what comes out of
like
that.
Like a fertilizer
kind of thing. But also you get biogas out of it. So you can cook using it. But it's a cleaner form of doing it, right? So without me getting into any more, too many examples. But my point is there's a lot that's happening. And unless we do the research and understand within an African context what that looks like, then we can start having these conversations where you need to start taking your hair home. Essentially. You understand?
Yeah, I feel like barbers are not going to like us after this episode.
I think so.
People are going to start asking for their hair back.
I think so. But it's interesting either way, right?
It's very interesting. So you're a strategic marketer. How do organizations move away from thinking about sustainability or circularity as a tick box exercise to something that's actually making their business better? And not just benefiting them, but the communities in which they serve. And please make it like a very African, give us like an African perspective. Or you can start like globally and then bring it home.
I was going to say, there's a lot of questions within that. Maybe let's do them one by one.
Okay.
So what's the first one?
So the first one is, how do organizations move away from thinking about circularity or sustainability as a checkbox exercise. So, like, the government is going to charge us carbon tax, so let's do the 3 things that we need to do so that we can get, I don't know, some kind of incentives or tax breaks by whatever practice, you know. So how does it move away from being a checkbox exercise to it actually being seen as a strategic lever or something that's valuable for an organization?
Yeah, you're asking very difficult questions. Look, I mean, that's not an easy sort of question to answer, right? But I mean, I'll try and use maybe 1 or 2 of the examples that I've given, maybe ones that I've not given. It stops being a tick box exercise once we start to see real impact, right? Because right now, that's why you'll have things like greenwashing and that sort of thing, right? Because people are hurriedly wanting to get this over and done with so they can get to the business of the day, right? To make profit or whatever the case may be, which is solely why I think organizations exist. But there's the other side, right, where your brand is dependent a lot on how people feel, think, and see you, if you think about it, right? So if you take an initiative, and I mean, there's a couple of examples. So if you as a business are supporting an organization like Retargeting in Gqeberha, right?
Okay.
Where it simply says we want to bring back dignity into the lives of the hawkers, right? People that we overlook every day. We think they're a nuisance. Funny enough, by the way, they actually collect about 80% of the after you've consumed a product. You know, whatever comes after this, they take that. It's informal, but they talk a lot. Yeah. So what organizations like Retarget will do, for instance, is they've got these collection sites, right, where they swap the rubbish, if you want to call it that, and then the hawker in that instance doesn't necessarily get money out of it, but he can exchange it for airtime. You know, what else is he looking for? He's looking for blankets, right? He's looking for, you know, clothes, right? They take that money, they reinvest it in buying more blankets, more clothes, putting it back, and then these guys, you know, it's circularity again. You know what I mean? It might sometimes be second-hand clothing, but again, it helps with prolonging that process. So if you're an organization, and you can say these are the type of initiatives that we are supporting, for instance, right? Or if you're an organization that's, I mean, if you look at, I think they call it urban surfers, I think here in Johannesburg, where they've taken or repurposed what they collect the, you know, the rubbish in, you know, those trolleys. And they've put smart technology, Internet of Things, you know what I mean?
On the trolley itself?
On the trolley itself.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
So then you can track in real time. So in other words, what you're doing there is you are taking the informal sector and then plugging it into the formal sector, because you can collect data in terms of how many of these trolleys are live, right? Which areas have they gone to? How much, you know, waste have they collected, right? If you are now sitting in the boardroom and your KPI perhaps is, from an ESG perspective, what have we done in terms of emissions and saving the environment, you now have real data, right? Which puts you in the right state in terms of government policy and all these other things. So it stops being a tick box exercise when we start thinking like that and supporting initiatives like that. And they exist. I mean, I've just given them to you now. But also, it stops being a tick box exercise when we can realize that Africa has always had the solutions. If you think about your grandmother again, the jersey that you're wearing, you would wear it, your cousin would wear it, your cousin's cousins, it would be passed down. We still do it with our kids now.
Yeah.
Your baby, I don't know, in 6 months' time, maybe the clothes don't fit. What do you do with the clothing? We don't throw them away.
Yeah, you give them to the next person that has a
100%.
baby. Yeah.
We've always, I think that's really what I'd love all of us to really take out of this. We've been actually doing this.
That culturally, this is something that we do practice.
100%.
Yeah. And I mean, I think loyalty and rewards is becoming a big thing in marketing. How can organizations use this loyalty and rewards system to get or to drive consumer behavior? I mean, I've seen a few examples.
In terms of driving loyalty.
Yeah. Or like rewarding good circular behavior from customers.
It's not difficult. I mean, maybe you will share. It would be interesting just to hear
my example.
To hear your examples. I mean, I can give mine, or you can start with yours.
So the example that I know is, I know Shell has these machines at their garages. I think it's like I don't know what you call it, right? But you can take your bottles and put it in this thing.
Yeah.
And it gives you points on your loyalty card, and then you can use those points to buy something. So I guess it encourages you as a consumer that when you finish drinking either your can of Coke or your bottle of water, to then take that bottle back and just dump it in that machine, and then get points on your loyalty card.
Look, it's definitely a good example, right? If you think about it, it's simple economics, right? It's self-interest drives us, right? You ask yourself why you're sitting here next to me asking me these questions. Self-interest. Either you want to learn more, you're trying to put your brand out there, maybe you are being paid to do it. But ultimately, self-interest drives us, right? So what I mean by that is, for instance, when we realize that when we can reward good circular behavior, right? If you look at the recycling example that I've given you, because you are creating jobs, right? In Lagos, I think Lagos, like many African countries, unemployment is real, and it's difficult to find employment. It's the same as in South Africa, right? So, firstly, the guy is driving the tricycle. He's getting a lot of exercise. So you're fighting obesity immediately. No, literally, it's a bike, and then it's got two wheels on the back.
Thinking about fighting obesity.
but you are. You're fighting obesity, right? He's getting fit, but also he's getting paid, right?
Okay.
Fine.
To ride the.
So that's the first thing, to ride, because what he does is that literally, just to give you a picture, he rides it, he goes to your home, stops, you bring your bag of, plastic cans and whatever the case is in your bag.
So it's kind of like hawkers, but like fancy.
Yeah. And it's not even that fancy, it's just smartly thought about, right? Because you bring up your bag, he then measures it, or it gets weighed, right? That data gets fed to a central system. So now they know your name, possibly where you stay, and then obviously
what kind of rubbish
you might be taking, how big it was, and on average how many times are you doing what it is that you are doing. And the beauty of it again is, so he benefits not just obviously from a fitness perspective, but he's getting obviously paid. Formal sector is then getting the information that it would ordinarily not get, right, if you think about it, because everything now is tracked in real time. But importantly, the household itself, you're earning points along the way. So you can exchange those points for things like, I'm out of soap, so I want, soap, I want. But the biggest, I think, benefit for me, again, is in a city that's bustling like that, or if you think about central Johannesburg, what that would allow is, it's a cleaner city, right? For instance, if it's a coastal city like Gqeberha, in our case, what happens to that plastic? It goes to the ocean, right? Or if there's rivers, it goes there. So it's just a headache. And it's a headache that didn't have to happen, because if many of us were just conscious of, when I'm done drinking here, I don't have to just throw it, not care about it. Actually, let me collect it, because, you know what I mean?
Actually get something,
100%.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, loyalty, and loyalty for me is just rewards, because that's why they call it loyalty and rewards, right? You're just rewarding good behavior. And as a result, because I'm getting something from a self-interest point of view, I'm then obviously, getting rewarded as I go, and my behavior changes.
I actually like what you've touched on, and I want us to think about consumers, of course, right? Like, how do organizations or governments equip everyday people to make more circular and energy conscious choices? Especially because a lot of organizations are not green because they believe becoming green is quite expensive. And a lot of people, maybe the perception is if I have to buy like the Woolies bag versus a plastic bag, I'm going to pay more. So, like, firstly, I think there's two parts to this question. The first one is what role do consumers have in holding, obviously, organizations accountable for them being more sustainable? And then the other part is how do organizations, I guess, educate consumers on how they can take part in becoming more circular or energy conscious?
Okay. So I guess the question is, from a consumer perspective, just trying to see if I made any reference to that here. So consumer, and then obviously how do we change behavior, I would assume, from the corporate side of you in terms of how we speak to those consumers. Is that the question?
Yeah, I mean, like, how do you motivate them? Because I think a lot of organizations don't take sustainability or circularity seriously because people actually don't care about it, right?
Yeah.
So because they don't care about it, they're like, well, why must we lose profitability in driving these initiatives if actually consumers will buy from us anyway, right?
Yeah.
So me as a consumer, how do what are the actions that I need to take to make sure that these companies actually change, right? And then the second one is, like, what will teach me about circularity? Like, if I don't know what circularity is, or that the decisions that I'm making every day are not energy conscious in a country like ours where we have an energy crisis.
So why should you care?
Yeah, why should I care? And how can you make me care as a person in marketing?
No problem. No problem. So there's a couple of things. First of all, from a consumer lens, we vote with our wallets. Think about it, right? So if you stop buying a brand because you care whether they are doing the right thing or not, they will listen because it impacts sales, profitability, and so on and so forth. So if you look at, for instance, the case of Nigeria, there was a huge campaign to say we are tired of dirty fuel. We want to have better fuel, because better fuel means less health issues, less environmental impact. And as a result of that, although it's taken a very long time, but I believe that there is some sort of, movement in that. I mean, if you do, again, I mean, I had to obviously do one or two, research before this as well. If you look at the narrative, you could see that even on the national sort of broadcasting stations, this was a big topic to say, why is the fuel that we're getting, we know that it gets regulated in terms of this is what it should be from a ppm perspective. Why are we getting maybe 4, 5, 10 times a higher ppm than what's required, right? Where are the regulators? Who's checking to see what we're getting is the right way? Why are we still accepting this sort of fuel? Why are we getting fuel dumping in our country? And as consumers, as the narrative was highlighted, changes started to happen. Now, if you take a city, for instance, in our case, like Cape Town, right? Right now, you've got a situation where I think it's Aero buses, for instance, right? So they piloted 20 buses, EV buses. I believe now this year they meant to take another 100 plus, right? Now, that could be an initiative that says it's the company themselves who undertook this, or it could be, for instance, the city that is saying more and more of our affluent consumers where we are, right? And other obviously sort of economic indicators will say less fuel, less that. But we do have, I think, the power if we, do the right thing in terms of not giving money where we don't want it to go. Okay. When you start to talk about, for instance, how companies in this case can think about this or impact how we see them in relation to the topic we're talking about, right? I think there's a number of things. So, for instance, whatever we do in terms of the options that we give consumers, they have to be modular. So by modular, I'm saying you want to give something smaller, and they will build up to something bigger. So if you take, for instance, the affordable portable power that you can get in Tembisa at the moment, it's called BP powered, by the way. Okay, you can get it now at a forecourt, for instance, Fontaine, or any other of the forecourts, right? The beauty there is someone can't afford a big, kind of
Generator.
100%. But if you're looking at an everyday earner, that person earns maybe $200, he cut, grass somewhere. He's looking for a smaller sort of solution that can, you know what I mean? It's like what Unilever did when they started repackaging soap into smaller, you know what I mean? It's the same type of, if we do it like that, we have immediate, I think, response, right? And because this is the reality of the people that we are dealing with, okay? But like you said, also there has to be an element of incentivization and loyalty that gets built in, right? Because if I can collect, give it to somebody, I earn points, you know what I mean? The other point, if you can just allow me, I think I wrote this somewhere here, is you kind of need to stop guilt tripping individuals. You have to. You know what I mean? And you have to speak in the language of your audience. So for instance, I mean, what I've got here is, when you speak about carbon offsets, for instance, it sounds very sciencey. Most of us, it leaves us, you understand?
Yeah.
But people care more about, for instance, saving money than about invisible gases.
That's true.
You understand?
Yeah.
Hence, again, if you're saying to somebody, I will give you power, portable, in your hands that you can take, rent daily, bring back, you know what I mean? And it's only $20.
Yeah.
Okay? If you're saying to someone, collect this, I'll give you that. You know what I mean? They're gaining something out of the transaction. So it's the narrative in terms of how do we position these things, right? Another one, for instance, is when you say net zero by 2050 or 2030, it seems so far off.
It's like, oh, well, we've got time.
100%. When I need electricity or some form of power to charge my cell phone, right? To put my TV on because I want to watch Generations. You understand? That's immediate. That's today. 2050 is far from me, right?
Yeah.
So when we start putting, I think, solutions that speak to that, we will have a much better response rate, I think, as organizations as well, to try and, you know what I mean? Because our people have got real access issues.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
And as organizations, you need to be doing something about that, because shareholders are pressurizing you every year, every month to say what initiatives are you undertaking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
And I mean, I like what you're saying because even if I think there's this horrible picture, I hate that picture so much of Shein, of like, I think it's like the Shein billboard, and then they have like all the materials like kind of linked, like just to show how much waste this organization, and I mean, it's a shocking image because you're like, oh, right, there's so much waste. But it's like, but I need affordable clothes.
Yeah.
Like, what must I do if I need like, I can't buy more expensive clothes because this company is generating a lot of waste.
Yeah.
Like the image is shocking. Yeah, of course, I'm like, oh, wow, this is so horrible. But am I going to change brands because of that image? Probably not, because they are competitive from a price perspective, and in a country like ours where like we are a very cost sensitive society. So I like what you said around that.
Actually, maybe if I can add to that as well. I mean, if you look at a business like I'm mentioning a lot of brands here, but I think it's important because we can't just give examples from one industry. I think people need just to relate, right? I think H&M does this very well, right? Where they will say, bring back old clothes.
Oh, yes, right?
That
scheme,
And you will get, I'm not sure if it's like a voucher or whatever, that
Yeah,
you can
or
utilize to buy some newer
Yeah,
items, right?
Yeah.
Again, that is circularity at its best.
Yeah.
And because they're collecting it at their stores, you're able to say, we collected so many garments, they were made up of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, I would probably figure that not everybody who gets the vouchers kind of buys again, right? But they are encouraged again, what's in it for
Yeah.
me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you would never take it there.
That's true.
You understand? You would
Yeah.
never take it there.
Yeah.
So, again, the point is, how do we, in a very smart way, try and prolong the process of a garment, for instance, right? Or what they call slow fashion, for instance, where if you buy a piece of clothing, right? When you're buying a cheap, very cheap one, what you do know is that it's going to be quickly rolled. You know what I mean? You can't pass it down to your cousin because it's got 10 holes. But if you buy a really good garment at the right price, you know what I mean? You
Yeah,
can.
you can
You
pass it
understand?
down, yeah.
And that's what I think, from a marketing perspective, those are the stories we need to tell. Because if I'm saying give this to your cousin and maybe it's an Amaxhosa piece, he's probably going to want to wear it.
Of course.
You happier because maybe it was 2 seasons ago, style. You want to go buy another one, but your wardrobe is,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, again, I think from a marketing lens, circularity lens, these are some of the important sort of discussions we need to start having. And a smart way of, doing.
Yeah, and I mean,
100%.
Apple does it really well. As when I the example that you just gave me now, because I mean, iPhone is so expensive. It helps to take the old one
Yes.
back.
100%.
It
100%, right?
and that's what we know them for. You know, it's part of their brand story. We know that, like, if you have an iPhone, you just take your old one back in store, and they'll give you like a I mean, it's not like a crazy discount, but it's something.
100%.
Yeah. So it does motivate me as a customer, actually.
Otherwise, maybe that could probably live somewhere in your house. Maybe after 7 years of it being on a shelf somewhere, you throw it in the dustbin.
Exactly.
And we know electronic or e-waste is
Yeah.
very difficult and hard. You know what I mean? To
Yeah.
process. You know what I mean? But most people would love, or some people would even love an iPhone from 2 iPhones ago, from a iPhone
it
whatever.
works.
If it works, you understand. So,
If it works, yeah.
but again, I mean, very, very, I think, brilliant example,
Yeah.
because that's essentially what we're talking about here.
So let's chat a bit about hawkers. I think you touched on them in the beginning, just
Yeah.
around their impact and like how important they are in our economy in terms of circularity or recyclability. Why is it though that when speaking policy and regulation and even like brand conversations, they don't come up? Why do we overlook them if they are as impactful as what you said in terms of collecting that waste?
Look, I think firstly, let's maybe recap as to the importance of hawkers, because I don't think many of us, you're worried about driving over them than really the real impact that they have on your surrounding and on your municipality, actually, specifically. So like I said, from a waste collection point of view, 80 to 90% of what's been consumed by us, especially things like these plastic cans or whatever, they're the ones that collect it, right? So that's a significant amount. What also research tells us is they probably save municipalities on average about between 300 to 750 million rands
Insane.
that they would have to invest in landfills. So these people are very, very important. So you ask yourself, like you mentioned, where the issue is. First one, like I said, the information I've just given you now, right, is not information that I knew, for instance, to the level that I know it now, for me to have an appreciation of the topic and who they are and what they do for us. Right? Because think about it, 300 million, 750 million that they're saving us, that would possibly go into us having to pay higher rates, higher taxes, or whatever the case may be. So already it tells you they are doing a really important job. Okay? But we are always saying these guys are the ones who are scouting our complexes. They're a nuisance. They're the ones that are tipping the criminals in terms of the weak spots. Now I'm not saying it's not true, and I'm sure there's stories that do back that up. All I'm saying is we just need to keep in mind that they are doing a really significant job. Right? Also, like I said earlier, the connection between the informal to formal sector is disjointed in most instances. Okay? And where the money goes, obviously, is where the more organized sector is, which is the formal sector. Because if you government, I'm just giving an example. If you're government, you want to deploy resources. You want to speak to people who have got some sort of organizations or who are organized. You understand? But you do find yourself in terms of, there's a lot of, I think, organizations that have tried to do this. If we think about the urban surfers that I've spoken to you about, even in terms of where their locations are, it's nearer, let's say, a CBD area where these guys, anyways, are always visiting, right? We also don't realize the importance that they play from a UN Sustainable Development Goals point of view, right? I think there's a goal around, waste getting into water, for instance. Most of what they're collecting would have ended there, right? Around maybe, employment and all those other things. So there's a lot of that good that they are doing. But what you tend to find, let's say in a South African perspective, I mean, I can't talk most about other sort of sectors, right? Or other places, but there are policy guidelines in place, that speak about, formalized sectors having to reinvest, some of the profits into the informal sector to try and bring them up. The issue is that it's not really enforceable. You know what I mean? And until we start having a stick approach, to a lesser or greater extent, we're going to have problems where we're not pulling them as much as we need to. So we'll stop looking at them as nuisances because they'll have maybe better delivery, vehicles that they're going in or that they are in. They'll be much more formalized and they'll probably look a little bit more better as well. But the point is that, that's I think for me, that's the long answer to the short question.
I mean, I hear what you're saying. I mean, firstly, I think sometimes in South Africa, we are very unrealistic about the kind of economy that we have. I think a lot of our growth in this country is within the informal sector, right? And not just from a hawker perspective, but even from an entrepreneurial perspective, So it is strange that even though we know this, we still kind of want that like formality around things, right? And what is interesting, because now with the hawker, I know there's this regulation, EPR, I think it was introduced in 2020, around 2020, where the government obviously now wants to charge organizations for the waste that they produce, which in the past, I think the producer of like, if a bottle is produced by a bottle producer, then they would charge it to that bottle producer. But now if it's branded UJ is responsible for it, right?
Correct.
So obviously now with this new regulation, a lot of organizations are thinking, oh no, now we have to like collect our own waste. Like, how do you think organizations can then like tap into this informal sector? Because I think they're thinking like they need like a formalized strategy instead of, I don't know, like using these hawkers to kind of co-create something, which will probably be a cheaper than trying to create like a formalized.
For sure. Look, I also think when we speak about hawkers, we complicate the discussion. But I mean, if we take it academically, linear economy says I produce this, right? Obviously, I must get the plastic, I must manufacture it, I must then get the distribution network. You get it, you consume it. What happens to it
after
is not my baby.
No.
You understand?
I've made my money.
100%. Because again, like I said, when we start talking carbon offsetting, we start talking net zero by such and such a time, it's too sciencey, too fictional. So what does circularity actually talk to? It says, you are responsible from cradle to grave. You need to be able to track that this bottle that I produced, I was able to reuse it, recycle it, and whatever. Look, and I think even when I teach, one of the things that I try and do is to debunk or make some of these concepts as easy as enough. That's all. Cradle to cradle, when it gets born, grave when it, you know what I mean? What happens to this particular product? But I think also the other point I'd just like to make is, again, guys, let's not forget, hawkers have been doing all those three things I spoke to you about in terms of extending the life of, whatever that is being sold. Like, for instance, I'm not sure if you recall, or maybe what township, I'm assuming that you grew up in one, but I'll talk about my one. You could, for instance, go and buy 6 tomatoes, right? And the hawker doesn't give you a new plastic bag. They give you a not so wrinkled plastic bag.
Where does the plastic bag come from? Because I don't know this one.
No, but I mean, you can see if the plastic bag
Has been used or not.
You know what I mean? Okay. And it's up to you. Are you going to carry them
by hand,
right?
Or do you want the plastic?
Correct. You understand? Or, for instance, I mean, I've got another example I have here is they'll maybe take, this happens even though maybe not so much in South Africa, I would imagine. But you can go and buy cooking oil, right? That's been put in a different bottle than the one. So they take the big and they pour it.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay.
Interestingly, I think this might be in Cosmo. I stand to be corrected.
Okay.
And I think it's CSIR, or I just forgot it might be that organization, and I don't know what entrepreneurs came up with this idea, but you can literally walk into a space maybe such as this one. It's a shop, okay? And they have, so if you want Millie Meal, for instance, you bring your 20 liter, it's on tap.
That's insane.
You understand?
Yeah.
For instance, the one interview was, or feedback was, for a 500 ml sugar that you would buy, for instance, at a Checkers or any other sort of retailer, okay, you might be paying 13 Rand for 500 kgs. It's kg, right? Not mils, yeah, kg. But there, because you brought your own container, you're probably buying it at 9 Rands.
Okay.
You understand? So again, if you can dispense and you can sell, you can bring, your own cooking oil, you can do the same thing. But because people don't really care about this.
They actually don't.
You understand?
Yeah.
And
there's some markets that really don't care about it, yeah. And that's actually such a good example, because then even as an organization, you can choose to have a dispenser versus like what you would spend on packaging. And 100%. You could save, you could pocket that amount.
100%. Yeah. Because once I get this home, no one says I've got some other fancy brand of olive oil or cooking oil. Or, what's important is when I make my pap, or when I cook my egg, or whatever the case is. And I think those are the real conversations. And again, look, I bring in a lot of examples again, because my ideology is we learn better, when we visualize some of these things. So I just hope that for the sake of the viewer, so they understand why I'm giving a lot of context around these things.
No, I think you've given some really good examples.
You understand?
Yeah.
And again, when we think about it, it's always high level. All I'm saying is what you need to think, feel, and do is just to understand that from a heritage perspective. I mean, the fact that you would have taken your shoe, once the sole finishes, you go and get it refitted.
You can get a new sole.
You understand?
Yeah.
I've got shoes where I've done that 3 times.
Yeah.
And a shoe that I bought in 2020, I still have it now, for instance.
Yeah.
You understand? And I wear that shoe maybe 3 times a week to work. So now that I think about it, I have been a very good ambassador of circularity.
I guess with the hair and the shoes.
You see what I'm saying? So it's not complicated. It really isn't.
So I think the last thing that I think we should touch on is, do you have any real world examples? I mean, I think you gave quite a few examples.
I tried.
Right? Of a campaign that like really resonated with you, that an organization kind of ran, that felt like authentically African, but obviously around circularity and sustainability. It's a tough one, I know.
Yeah, look, it's a tough one. I mean, it's a really...
Just needed to put you on your toes right at the end.
A really tough... I'll take it back to the examples. So H&M, I mean, I've mentioned that, for instance.
Yes, that was a really good example.
Very good example.
Yeah.
It's a good question. Look, if you look at maybe a company like Maxhosa, maybe I'm I'm reaching here, but I mean it is what it is. For instance, I think they once hosted a sustainable fashion show, right,
Okay.
where they would have highlighted things, like some of the concepts I've mentioned of slow fashion in terms of it's a high value item, you can keep it longer, you can pass it down and do all those lovely things. They would have highlighted, for instance, things like what it's made of. It's wool. So wool doesn't damage, for instance, the environment as much as maybe plastic, does. That they obviously have got cotton on there. So, like I said, I might be reaching, but that for me is oh, and then obviously the supply chain, the fact that whether true or not, I mean, I stand to be corrected. It's produced in South Africa,
Okay.
right? So what that means is, because it's local, right? From a supply chain point of view, it's not going on ships,
Yeah,
for example.
So, yeah.
You understand what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
the
Less
environmental
fuel, less.
impact is, yeah.
So for instance, I think for me, especially if you're a brand and you're forward looking, right? When you highlight something that would resonate with your typical customer like that, right? Or when you highlight, for instance, the first carbon neutral dealerships that I said kind of brought me into the whole sustainable space for me to understand it. The brand itself in question, won't mention names, but is a brand that is aspirational, where the customer is a place where if I can afford this car brand, I'm not thinking about bread and butter issues, right? I'm thinking about what else are they adding value beyond the beautiful design, the ruggedness, the comfortability, the aspirational side of things. You understand? So I think businesses are always trying to do these things. The only thing, like I say, is don't think too hard. There's everyday things that you can do, initiatives that you can support. Within your organization, your industry itself, which should really, really bode well with your customers. And they'll vote with their wallets at the end of the day. Be it high end, like Amaxhosa or the brand that I've just spoke about, be it someone who wants to go and fill up sugar because they're saving 5 rands. Self-interest, people will always do what
benefits
100%.
them. Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Thandekile, thank you so much for your time. Really enjoyed the conversation. I learned quite a bit, and thank you for the great examples as well.
Fantastic.
Hopefully
Thank
we'll
you for
talk to
having
you
me.
again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.